you doing today? Are
I'm
we
gonna
watching?
I'm gonna just a second.
Cooking. Ooh.
Okay. Oh my gosh, what are we doing?
Kitchen.
Slideshow. Why does it say give control? I want to put it in slideshow mode. It won't let me do it. There we go. From current. Okay, what are we talking about today, Kelton?
4 quarts equals 1 gallon. Kitchen math and measuring.
Kitchen math
Or
and measuring. Do you think
or
that
it's
that's something
called
that's,
division.
yeah, do you think that that's something that's important?
Yes.
Yes.
Why? Why? Why would I need to know math in the kitchen? Anybody?
It's probably so that you know how many cups or how many tablespoons you need.
Okay. Yep, it's important to know our measurements, but why would I need to know math?
Because you
I mean,
need.
how does math play a role in cooking?
I think it's because 4 quarts equals what? 8 gallons.
Okay, so think about it this way, you guys. We touched a little bit on it yesterday, or not, last week. We talked about changing recipes up, right? If I had to change a recipe, would I need to know how to cut a fraction in half?
Yeah.
Right? I would need to know those basic skills, right? So that's where math plays. There's definitely math in the kitchen, but it's not something that you need to be afraid of. Do you guys all enjoy math?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Good, good. Well, then this is going to be fun. Okay, so most cooks use recipes, and a recipe is a list of ingredients that gives you directions for how to prepare a specific food. So today what we're going to be talking about is we are going to be talking about math in the kitchen, but we're also going to be talking about how you read a recipe, okay? We're going to be watching some videos too, and you're going to need a piece of paper and a pencil today, or a pen. So if you do not have that, I would like for you to go and get that right now so you're ready to go. I'll give you
Yes,
just
ma'am.
a second to do it.
Yes, ma'am. I'll go do that.
Thank you, Kelton. When you are ready to go, give me like the thumbs up or the hand up icon. Let me know I can move on. Isabella, are you getting paper?
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, you're getting it? Okay, just want to make sure. P.S. I love your profile picture.
What?
I like your profile picture.
Thank you.
Are you super into anime?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm getting
you ready to go, bud?
Speak, I'll be back.
Okay, hurry up, Kelton. Okay, I'm going to keep going while we're waiting on the last few real quickly. Okay, so if you know how to follow a recipe, then you're going to be successful in the kitchen. And who knows, you could become a famous chef, right? Who would want to be on, have you guys ever watched like Top Chef or any of those shows? Yeah?
Yes.
Did those freak you out, or are you like, I would love to be on one of those?
Sometimes.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd like that kind of pressure though. The way that they like, get all like frazzled and stuff. Yeah, that sounds like a lot. Okay. So we talked about this a little bit. So successful cooks know how to read a recipe and abbreviations. We talked about that last week, right? What does OZ stand for? Who remembers that abbreviation? Check your notes if you need it. Isabella, I see your hand up.
Ounces?
Good job. What does DOZ stand for? Vanessa?
Dozen.
Good job. Oh my gosh, you guys are killing it. Okay, so when you do this Kahoot, oh my gosh. Okay, so you guys remember, okay, what does a big T stand for?
Tablespoon.
Good. Next time, raise your hand so everybody can participate. What does a little t stand for, Ashley?
Teaspoon.
Good job. Okay. So we know that which one is bigger, a tablespoon or a teaspoon, Matthew Vu?
I think, again, can you repeat the teaspoon thing again?
Sure. Which is larger, tablespoon or a teaspoon?
Tablespoon?
Good. Yep. Awesome job. Okay, so we're going to talk a little good cooks know the equivalent measurements and how to change a recipe. Do you think you might ever have to change a recipe sometimes?
Yes.
Yeah, you're going to have to change recipes sometimes depending on how many people you're cooking for your own taste, or if you have an aversion to certain types of food, you might have to change a recipe out, and it's good to know how to do that. So a recipe is like a formula, okay? So think of it as like your map to being able to make the food how it needs to be made, right? So when you're first starting to cook, you want to make sure that you're following a recipe very precisely, okay? When you get more comfortable, that's when you can start adding your own flair to it. But there's things called flexible recipes and unflexible recipes, okay? Recipes that for baking are ones that are not flexible, meaning I can't add, I shouldn't be adding or taking things away unless I have a firm understanding of the science behind baking, because that's what baking is. It's a science, right? So especially with baking, you want to make sure you're following the recipe pretty precisely. Okay, you want to make sure so the recipe is going to tell us the ingredients. Sometimes it'll tell us the equipment we need, the directions, the yield. That means how many people am I going to serve? And sometimes it'll give you like nutritional information, but that's usually rare. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch this video on how to read a recipe. This guy is from a place called Edible Schoolyard in Berkeley, and it's a school that does gardening and cooking. So it's a pretty neat place. So we're going to watch it, and so be paying attention because you're going to have to answer some questions. We're going to watch the video 2 times, okay? If you want to take any notes while you're doing it, feel free to, okay?
Hi, I'm Nick Lee, and I'm a chef teacher at the Edible Schoolyard Berkeley Kitchen Classroom. Today we're having a digital chef meeting on recipe reading. Recipe reading can be very different than reading other texts.
Can you guys hear it
Recipe
okay?
reading can help you as a cook in your experience
Yes.
in the Edible Schoolyard Kitchen Classroom and as a cook at home. Today, we're going to talk about recipe reading, and we're going to use 3 Edible Schoolyard Kitchen Classroom recipes to illustrate how to read a recipe and how there are differences between precise and flexible recipes. First, we're going to talk about how to read a recipe. First thing is that there's an ingredient list up top and instructions down below. In the ingredient list, there will be quantities listed, but they won't be listed down below in the instructions. So you'll have to cross-reference the two, reading the instructions and looking back up to see the quantities.
For example, in the sauteed greens recipe, the instructions say heat the olive oil over medium heat. So you have to look up to the ingredients list to see that you need 3 tablespoons olive oil.
When you read a recipe, make sure
I just want you to understand that for a second. So do you understand that? So in the very top, in the quantities, it's going to tell you how much of something you need, right? Then when in the directions, it's not going to tell you, again, how much of that ingredient you're going to need. You're going to have to go back up to the top to find that. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, let me know and I'll explain it a different way. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
read the instructions all the way through before starting to cook. Sometimes there are instructions
That's my number one
hidden
rule.
within.
Read the instructions all the way through. You may want to write that down. Read the instructions all the way through. Because that's when you get into trouble, is when you don't read your instructions all the way through before you start. Do you know how many times, especially when I first was learning how to cook, that you just kind of glance over it and then you realize, oh my gosh, this has to chill for 4 hours and I'm having company in 2. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you always want to make sure that you're reading the recipe all the way through.
The ingredients list. For example, in sauteed greens, it says 4 cloves of garlic minced. It doesn't say to mince the garlic in the instructions because the recipe has already told you that you need to mince the garlic. Sometimes ingredients will be grouped into categories. For example, in the Pan de los Muertos recipe, there are the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients. The dry ingredients are the flours, the baking powder, the sugar, and the salt. In the instructions, it says to mix the dry ingredients instead of listing each of those ingredients again. Sometimes there won't be exact quantities for ingredients. Frequently, this is for salt and pepper, and they will say season to taste. This means that it's an opportunity for you to decide as a chef how much salt and pepper to add. Normally, to do that, you would taste your dish, add a little bit, taste again until you think that it's just right. It's also important to pay attention to sequence language in the instructions. Sequence words like first, next, after, then, and while will tell you when to do the next step of a recipe. For example, in sauteed greens, the recipe says to add the greens, and when they are half cooked, add the soy sauce and sesame oil. Now that you know how to read a recipe, we're going to talk a little bit about flexible and precise recipes. Flexible recipes are recipes in which you can change ingredients or change the method a little bit based on the things that you have growing in your garden or available to you. Precise recipes, you need to be much more exact. You have to follow the steps more closely, and substitutions are harder to make. Generally, baking recipes are precise, and most savory cooking recipes are more flexible. Some recipes
Okay,
will
so
let
there's 2 types of recipes. There's precise, right? And there's flexible, right? Flexible recipes are ones that you can kind of change based on your taste. Precise recipes are ones that you don't want to be making a lot of substitutions for, right? And those are going to be things like baking.
Okay. What was the other word?
So it was flexible and
Okay.
precise.
available to you. Precise recipes, you need to be much more exact. You have to follow the steps more closely, and substitutions are harder to make. Generally, baking recipes are precise, and most savory cooking recipes are more flexible. Some recipes will let you know that they're very flexible by giving you possible substitutions. For example, our autumn harvest soup recipe doesn't even tell you which crunchy vegetables to use. It just says use crunchy vegetables like squash, potatoes, turnips, or beets. Now that you know a little bit about the differences between precise and flexible recipes and how to read a recipe, go out, start cooking, and have fun.
Okay, now you're going to watch it one more time because we're going to fill out a worksheet together. So I want to make sure that you got all the information, okay? So this time, so you kind of watched it through the whole way through. The second time, if you want to make any notes, and then we'll answer the worksheet together, okay?
I'm a chef teacher at the Edible Schoolyard Berkeley Kitchen Classroom. Today we're having a digital chef meeting on recipe reading. Recipe reading can be very different than reading other texts. Recipe reading can help you as a cook in your experience in the Edible Schoolyard Kitchen Classroom and as a cook at home. Today we're going to talk about recipe reading, and we're going to use 3 Edible Schoolyard Kitchen Classroom recipes to illustrate how to read a recipe and how there are differences between precise and flexible recipes. First, we're going to talk about how to read a recipe. First thing is that there's an ingredient list up top and instructions down below. In the ingredient list, there will be quantities listed, but they won't be listed down below in the instructions. So you'll have to cross-reference the two, reading the instructions and looking back up to see the quantities.
For example, in the sauteed greens recipe, the instructions say heat the olive oil over medium heat. So you have to look up to the ingredients list to see that you need 3 tablespoons olive oil.
When you read a recipe, make sure that you read the instructions all the way through before starting to cook. Sometimes there are instructions hidden within the ingredients list. For example, in sauteed greens, it says 4 cloves of garlic minced. It doesn't say to mince the garlic in the instructions because the recipe has already told you that you need to mince the garlic. Sometimes ingredients will be grouped into categories. For example, in the Pan de los Muertos recipe, there are the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients. The dry ingredients are the flours, the baking powder, the sugar, and the salt. In the instructions, it says to mix the dry ingredients instead of listing each of those ingredients again. Sometimes there won't be exact quantities for ingredients. Frequently, this is for salt and pepper, and they will say season to taste. This means that it's an opportunity for you to decide as a chef how much salt and pepper to add. Normally, to do that, you would taste your dish, add a little bit, taste again until you think that it's just right. It's also important to pay attention to sequence language in the instructions. Sequence words like first, next, after, then, and while will tell you when to do the next step of a recipe. For example, in sauteed greens, the recipe says to add the greens, and when they are half cooked, add the soy sauce and sesame oil. Now that you know how to read a recipe, we're going to talk a little bit about flexible and precise recipes. Flexible recipes are recipes in which you can change ingredients or change the method a little bit based on the things that you have growing in your garden or available to you. Precise recipes, you need to be much more exact. You have to follow the steps more closely, and substitutions are harder to make. Generally, baking recipes are precise, and most savory cooking recipes are more flexible. Some recipes will let you know that they're very flexible by giving you possible substitutions. For example, our autumn harvest soup recipe doesn't even tell you which crunchy vegetables to use. It just says use crunchy vegetables like squash, potatoes, turnips, or beets. Now that you know a little bit about the differences between precise and flexible recipes and how to read a recipe.
Okay, let's get that. Hold on. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Here's the first question. What is the difference between flexible and precise recipes? What's the difference between flexible and precise recipe? Who would like to answer that? Kelton? Raise your hand up.
Yeah.
What's the difference between flexible and a precise recipe?
Precise recipe is basically you follow the rules what they applied to the recipe.
Okay, I like that. A precise recipe follows the rules, right?
Yes.
Follows the rules. What about a flexible recipe?
A flexible one is that you can add any flavor to it of your liking.
You can add things and take things away, right?
Yes.
Would you all agree?
Yes.
Okay, good. Which ingredient in the recipe sauteed greens have, we're not going to do that part. Because we didn't look at that recipe. Why might you need to cross-reference between the instructions and the ingredient list? Okay, remember, cross-referencing means that I'm going to go back up and forth. Okay, so here, let me see if I have sauteed greens. Yep, I can pull that up. Okay. So here, right here, I have the ingredients, right? And it tells me how much of each one of those I need. Okay. When I go down to the instructions part, it's not going to tell me how much of that I need, right? So when it says cross-reference, that means I need to go back up to the top and see, oh, I need 3 tablespoons of olive oil when it tells you to add the olive oil into your recipe, right? So right here it says, in a heavy bottom pot, heat the olive oil over medium heat. Does it tell me how much olive oil I need?
No.
So then I have to go up, right? And how much olive oil do I need? TJ?
I don't see it.
Do you see it?
No.
You guys not see my screen right now?
I see the video, but I
Oh,
don't
you
see the
don't
other
see it?
part.
Yeah,
You don't see the recipe right now?
Yeah.
No.
Oh
No.
my gosh, so annoying. Okay, hold on just a second. Let me stop sharing. Open share table. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so sauteed greens. So you see right here, I have what? All of my ingredients, right? And my instructions are down below, but they don't tell me how much of it I need, right? So I go back up and I look right here to see how much I need in my ingredients. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's called cross-referencing. Okay, so now, so why might you need to cross-reference between the instructions and the ingredient list? What did I just say, guys? Why do I have to go back up in the ingredients list when I'm looking at my instructions? I can't see if your hand's raised. Eric. Are you guys not understanding this?
I understand.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay. So,
you want me to answer it? My bad.
No, it's fine. Okay, so think about it this way. When I looked at this recipe right here, right? I have this right here, which is my list of what? What is this my list of?
Ingredients.
Ingredients, right? And then right down here, I have all of my what? Instructions, right? This is like, it's handwritten, so I don't really like how it's written, but it's all my instructions, right? So when I have all of my instructions, it's not going to tell me how much of the ingredient I need, correct? Because
No.
it's all up here in the ingredient part, right? Okay, so let me pull up, let me pull up another recipe. Hold on. Okay, here we have no bake energy balls, right? You see these right here, guys? I have
Yes.
my list. No, thank you. That's super annoying. Okay, so I see my list of ingredients, correct? I need 1 cup of rolled oats. I need all of these things right here, correct? Those are my list of ingredients. Then I have my instructions down here, or my directions, right? Does it tell me how much oats I need in my directions?
No.
No, because they're where? They're in my ingredient list, right? So I have to go back up in my ingredients list to see how much oats I need. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that what I just did is called cross-referencing. That just means that I'm going back up to see what I need, right? Because it's not going to be written in my directions. Does that make a little bit more sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry if that was confusing. Okay, so we need to cross-reference because the what? The instructions don't give us the amount in the ingredients, right?
Yeah.
If I could spell the day. Okay. What's an example of sequence language? Did you guys pick up on that? So when it tells me, like here, let's see on this one. This one's not a great example. Let's see if I can find another one. Let's see, chicken. Can I find here? Chicken Parmesan. Pull up. Okay, so we're making chicken Parmesan here. I have all of my ingredients, right? Step 1, place the chicken breast between 2 sheets of heavy plastic, firmly pound. Okay, it tells me to do that. Beat in eggs, mix. Okay, sometimes it'll say, and I'm not actually even seeing it on here, it'll say in a recipe, first, next, last, things like that. Those are sequence words. That lets me know what's coming next. Do you understand that? So things like first, second, next, last. Those are examples of sequence language that you might see in a recipe. Matthew.
I think I heard more. I think I heard like words like then and while.
Yep, there's more. I just gave you a few. So you could say while, yeah, and give me another one, bud. What was the other one? More?
Then.
Yep, exactly. Yep, those are all examples of sequence. I love that you picked up some more of those. That's awesome, buddy. Okay, so we're going to leave that there. Do you guys feel like you have a little bit of an understanding on how to read a recipe?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Let me go here. Let me stop sharing for a second. Okay. Let's go. I don't want that one. Okay. So here are the parts of a recipe again. Okay. So just so we make sure, this is going to be the name of the recipe, right? That's going to tell me what I'm making. The yield. Do you think it's important to know the yield?
Yes.
What is the yield?
Yes.
Okay. What is the yield? Isabella, what's the yield?
Amount of servings?
Okay, so if I'm having a dinner party and my recipe, and I'm having 10 people over, but my recipe only makes enough for 4, do I need to maybe look at another recipe or think about doubling that recipe?
Double?
Double, exactly. Okay, so equipment, it's going to let me know. Sometimes it'll let me know what I need. Sometimes you're going to have to look through to see what you need. Okay, you're going to have your ingredients. It's going to tell you what you need to get. And then you're going to have your directions, which remember, what are you going to do before you start anything? Before you start anything in the kitchen, what are you going to do? TJ?
Wash your hands.
Did you say wash your hands?
Yeah.
Yep, you're going to wash your hands. And then what are you going to do? Should I just start cooking or should I read my recipe all the way through?
Read your recipe all the way through.
Okay, you got to read it all the way through. So we want to read the recipe carefully before beginning. Check to see if you have all of the ingredients, right? And TJ, you remember this from when we would cook together, right? That we always had like a checklist of everything we needed. Okay, we're going to preheat the oven if we need to. Okay, so you're going to look to see. That's super important if you're baking. You want to make sure your oven is hot. Gather all the equipment you need. Complete any preparation of specific ingredients. So if it tells you to chop the nuts or to melt the chocolate, you're going to do that before you start. And we have to measure exactly. We talked a lot about measurements, right? The other day. How do I measure brown sugar? How do I measure brown sugar? Ashley?
You have to make sure that the brown sugar is definitely packed.
Oh my gosh, you guys are so brilliant. Yes. Yes, ma'am. You are correct. Okay, we want to mix carefully following each direction and then bake or cook at the temperature and time directed. Okay? The most important step is reading the recipe so you know what you need to do. And I know you probably think like, okay, Miss Mika, I get it. But that's really where we get into trouble is when you don't read the recipe all the way through. We've had it happen when we baked together last year, right? When you didn't read the recipe all the way through and then you're like, oh my gosh, we missed a step, right? And sometimes it's because we get excited and we're having fun in the kitchen. I love that. But when it really matters and you're having people over, you don't want to get flustered because you didn't read the recipe all the way through, right? Okay. We know we should wash our hands for 20 seconds. Okay. And I think we are not gonna, let's see. Okay, we might have a little bit of time for this. So changing the yield, that means like changing the amount, okay? So suppose you have a standardized recipe for chocolate chip cookies, okay? That yields 6 dozen cookies. okay? But you only want to make 3 dozen cookies. So that means that I'm cutting the recipe in what? Half, right? I'm decreasing the recipe. You can a lot of times adjust the ingredients to change the yield, okay? But what I want you to do is I want you to look at both of these recipes. Sometimes it's better to choose a different recipe if I know I have to cut a recipe in half, okay? I want you really quickly to look at both of these recipes and tell me which would be the better recipe for me to cut in half. Just look at it. Do you want me to read it to you? You guys got it?
I'm good.
Okay. When you think you know the answer, put your hand up.
Speak up.
Yeah.
I think it's this blue one.
You think that that's the better one to cut in half?
No, the first one.
You think the red one's the better one to cut? Tell me why.
Because it has 2 sticks of meringue, 1.5 cup, 2 cups of granulated sugar, 2 eggs beaten in 1 at a time, 1.5 teaspoon.
So why is that one a better one to cut in half than the blue one?
Because it has more quantity.
So it's easier to cut?
Yeah.
Okay, I think you're onto the right thing. Also, is it kind of hard to cut an egg in half?
Yeah.
Okay, it's going to be a little difficult to do that, right? So that's why this one, the one in the red, is going to be the one that's going to be the easier one to cut in half. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I know I have to cut a recipe, you're going to want to look at 2 separate recipes and see, okay, is this one going to be able to be cut in half? Now, this is the thing I'll say. When you are baking is what am I going to say? A science, right? Baking is a science. There's chemical reactions happening when we're baking that are dependent on things rising or falling in the oven, right? So sometimes when you cut a recipe or add to a recipe in baking, it doesn't always turn out perfectly. Okay, so if it's something that you're just making at home and you just want to test it out, great. If it's something that you're making for a really large group of people, you might want to try to double that first before you make it for everybody, right? To make sure it turns out correctly. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, we're going to stop there for today because we didn't even get to math today, but man, we learned a lot today. Can anybody give me one takeaway that they had today? Eric, is your hand up for that, or was it for something else?
Something else.
Okay. TJ, you have your hand up. What's your takeaway for today?
We have to double the recipe.
It's important to learn how to double a recipe? Sure.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for contributing. Vanessa?
It is important to follow directions to recipe.
Yes. Awesome. Ashley?
I learned about how to make sure you have the ingredients ready, especially for baking.
Yes, it's always great to have everything in there. Matthew?
Wash your hands, and I have one more question after that.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yes.
Yes, Kelton.
Also, double the recipe if it's necessary. If you have a big party, double the cake recipe or double your food.
Right. So we want to make sure we look at the yield, right, to see how much of something. Okay, Matthew, what's your question, bud? And then we'll end on that note because you guys have another class to go to.
Actually, I want to talk to you private.
Okay.
About
Well,
cooking.
okay, you hold on for a second then. And the rest of you guys, I will see you on Thursday, my darlings. Bye.
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 Today is Tuesday, my bad. Tomorrow's
today is
Thursday.
Thursday. No,
Feels like
tomorrow will be
Thursday.
when. Oh, is today Thursday?
Yeah.
You guys, my week is so off. I guess.
Yeah, mine is too.
I think it was
I'm
having that
confused.
holiday, right? having that holiday. Wow, I'm literally going crazy. Okay, so just kidding. I will see you next week.
Yeah.
I'll see you next week. Oh, it's going to be too long. Okay, guys, I'll see you on Tuesday. Bye.
Make more videos
Bye.
of you cooking, please.
You want a video of me cooking? Okay. Bye, Rocky.
Miss Mika.
Yes, buddy.
So I was gonna ask you, like when you said, are you saying that I should make brownies on fall break or before spring break?
Oh, I think you should make them over fall break because spring break's a long ways away.
Oh, I know, but I think I'm gonna try buying another box of brownies because I can't like make so many, and then everyone's not gonna have all of it. But actually, I'm gonna save for my family as well. That's why.
Okay, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, I'll see you the next week. Bye.
Okay, bye, guys.